Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes, and this is the Daily Brief. If you're looking for Ukraine war news, I do this every morning. It is Sunday, August 4th. 2024. So yesterday was so busy. I had so much to cover. It was hard to prioritize it, but we didn't have some of the results. Today's exactly the opposite. We have the results of yesterday, everything that happened, but we don't have a lot of active news today. So here's what happened. 1,150 Russians off the battlefield, 5 tanks, 17 armored combat vehicles, 59 artillery pieces, 80 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's what's happened overnight. Now, the Russians lost only 5 Shahed drones overnight, all of which were shot down. And that makes me nervous because when they do just a little bit, what they're doing is they're launching 5, but they're putting 5 aside for a massive assault later on. And that's kind of the way that they've rolled for some time now. So it's somewhat predictable. Andrew Perpetua usually does this map of how many Russian to Ukrainian vehicles and things were destroyed. And he's pretty funny. He wrote this. I never actually finished doing yesterday, which is why there'll be no losses list this morning. And there was no map update. But we're planning on finishing yesterday and today, both today. We declare it Sunday, our day of suffering. He's got a harder job than I do. Okay, today Ukrainian Air Force announces the destruction of 8,000 enemy air targets since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The Air Force in Ukraine is undermanned. They have fewer planes than they need, and they are very, very busy, but they do an incredible job with the limited resources that they have. 1 dead, 12 injured in enemy attacks in the Kharkiv region in the past 24 hours. And so it's going to be, you're going to continue to hear a lot about both Kharkiv and Pokrovsk. At least 1 dead, 2 injured in enemy attacks in Pokrovsk. Those are the 2 big hotspots that you'll pay attention to. Okay, that's today's information. Well, a little bit more. Strong fire has broken out in occupied Mariupol. Pillar of smoke was spotted in that area. The fire was not accidental. This is Ukraine striking at the Russians. And again, in Belgorod, a drone flew into an open window of an apartment and exploded there. I'm not sure what they were trying to target with that, but I mean, that's like the extent of what we have for today. Okay, so we could just stop there. But rather than stop there, let's go back and look at what actually happened yesterday, because we had all these things happening simultaneously, but we didn't have a lot of reports of what actually was hit. Ukrainian forces reportedly struck Russian S-400 air defense missile launchers, S-500 air defense system, and the Russian Black Sea Fleet's Rostov-on-Don Kilo-class submarine that was on August 2nd into August 3rd. And then Ukrainian forces also conducted a series of successful drone strikes against military targets in Rostov, Kursk, Belgorod Oblast on August 3rd. Russian forces recently advanced near Kremenna, Seversk, and Chasiv Yar. So again, yesterday I framed this as like they're fighting 2 different wars. The Russians are taking little incremental gains on the grounds, while Ukraine is actually bringing that drone warfare to bear on Russia and occupied Ukraine, Russian-held territories. I didn't even talk about the submarine yesterday morning. A little later in the day, as I was researching it, I realized that I can't do as well as what Johnny Pierce already did, so I posted that on my community tab and just said, just go watch that. He did a really good job. Usually well-informed Russian channel reports that on the night of August 3rd, an attack using, now this is what we were just talking about from yesterday, using 40 combat drones targeted the Morozovic airfield. Of the 40 drones, 18 reached their targets, so we didn't know that much information. We knew that the Russians would say everything shot down, which they did. Well, everything was destroyed is what they said, and technically that's true. The attack resulted in the destruction of a Su-34. I understand that you're supposed to say SU as opposed to Su. Somebody's corrected me. Behind the scenes, people feed me a lot of information. I really appreciate what I learned from you all. Su-34 fighter jet, destruction of an aviation weapons depot, damage to the flight control center, minor damage to the airfield's engineering equipment. And so that's what actually happened yesterday. The Economist magazine put out this thing about the F-16s. Now, they initially received 6 from early reports. The Economist now says they've received 10 total F-16 fighter jets. By the end of 2024, the Ukrainian Armed Forces will already have 20 American planes out of 79 promised. That's 20 by December. So F-16s aren't going to be this huge game changer, but they do, every one that is added incrementally helps them level a playing field. Okay, the other F-16s will arrive in batches during 2025. Okay, the Observer's view, this is in The Guardian. Okay, so I'm telling you, this is from The Guardian, very left-wing magazine, or not magazine, newspaper in Britain, talking about Gershkovich and the return of these prisoners in this swap. Many critical things have been said about U.S. President of late, some in this space, but credit where credit is due. Last week's freeing of 16 prisoners held on trumped-up charges by Vladimir Putin's dictatorship, 3 Americans, 6 people from other Western countries, and 7 Russian nationals was a personal triumph for Biden. He quietly pushed for a breakthrough for more than a year. Okay, I mean, there's something to say for perseverance. The prisoner swap, some, understandably, prefer to call it a hostage deal, was also a triumph for diplomacy, as Biden was quick to point out. American allies, including Germany, Norway, Poland, Turkey, which hosted the handover at Ankara Airport, stood with us and made bold and brave decisions, he said. Once the cheering fades, however, the potential downsides to all of this, and there are several and serious, will require careful thought. The case of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich is instructive. He was just doing his job when he was arrested and accused of spying. There was no evidence against him. Yet he was forced to endure agonizing months of detention and a show trial. All along, it was blindingly obvious that Putin was holding him hostage for use as a political bargaining chip. U.S. officials believe Putin's primary aim was to free his personal friend and FSB secret agent Vladimir Krasikov, a convicted assassin held in Germany. Once his release was agreed, and Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz took a lot of persuading, all the pieces, including the freeing of 7 other convicted Russians, fell into place. But make no mistake, this was America publicly bowing to blackmail. Let me read that again. This was America publicly bowing to blackmail. The example it sets, though hardly unprecedented elsewhere, is worrying and may encourage further hostage-taking. Worrying, too, is the fact that Russians targeted a journalist. Okay, but you all are largely aware of that. I ask this, after the recent prisoner exchange, what is most likely to happen? Putin will be more likely to work with the West. 2% actually said that. Putin will be less likely to work with the West. 1%. No change. And I understand if people say no change, but the majority of you said Putin will be more likely to arrest additional Westerners. And I think that's probably what's going to happen down the line. There'll be another Brittany Grenier or another Evan Gershkovich or whatever, and he'll just use that as a bargaining chip. Meanwhile, Russia is sentencing an abducted Ukrainian Orthodox priest to 14 years for spying for Ukraine because he's talking as a Ukrainian citizen to Ukrainian authorities about where Russians are because he's Ukrainian, and that's what people in Ukraine do. But then the Russian law is applied to where he was living, and he's sentenced to prison. While in Russia, an Orthodox priest continues to deliver cringeworthy sermons. He expresses outrage over women striving for equal rights since the 19th century. He has previously stated that dying in war is the best fate for Russians. Now, that's not anywhere in the Bible. And those who don't fight might die from some electric shocks or falling from buildings. That also is certainly not in the scripture. He also advised Russian soldiers to pray before launching missiles at Ukraine. So that's what's happening in Russia. Okay. 8 Ukrainian children aged 6 to 17 returned home from Russian-occupied part of Kherson Oblast. Now we're talking about 8 children, and this is a big thing because we measure returned children in the hundreds, even though they've been taken in the tens of thousands. Last couple things I'll leave you with. This is Dart Putin, the parody site. The submarine Rostov-on-Don has submerged during repairs. I see. Submarines are meant to submerge. My Lord President, there's a nuance. Now I'll leave you with this. The Ukrainian fencing team won the gold and got to hear their anthem being played during the Olympics. Now everybody's happy to hear their national anthem during the Olympics when their team wins. But this is any kind of boost, whether it's Eurovision or winning the Olympics, is a welcome reprieve for Ukrainians this time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.